Hey everyone, I'm Craig Lewin, founder of Beyond the Breakers Open Water Swim Conference, and today we're talking with Elaine Howley. So in 2019, when Sarah Thomas became the first person to swim the English Channel 4 times without stopping, there was a woman on the boat for every one of those 54 hours. She managed the turns, she safety swam in the dark, she kept the crew together, and when it was over, she handled the global media storm that followed. Elaine Howley has won the International Swimming Hall of Fame's Buck Dawson Authors Award twice. She's a marathon swimmer, an ice swimmer, the vice president of Mausa, the founder of Channel Support Services, and one of the most accomplished writers in the sport. She's coming back to Beyond the Breakers 2026 for another year, and she will be involved with 2 sessions. So I'm genuinely excited for both of them. So here we go. Let's get to know Elaine. Elaine, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate the time and excited to hear more about everything you've done.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. I'm
All right.
excited to talk to you too, Craig.
Amazing. So let's jump in. You've done it all in open water. You've swum channels, you've directed races, you've observed swims, you've written about the sport for 15 years, you've been on some pretty impressive crew boats. So when someone asks you, what you do, how do you even start answering that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on the context of the question. Sometimes, you're in a situation where it's obvious that they want to know more about your swimming or have no context about race direction or crewing. So sometimes that'll guide the answer. But, in a nutshell, I tell people that I'm a marathon and ice swimmer, longtime organizer and supporter of swims, and yeah, I like to crew people on long swims and write about it.
So how did you transition from your own swims to crewing, or did crewing come first?
I've done them both all along. Like it's just been kind of a parallel track pretty much the entire time I've been in the sport. Because the first year or two that I started doing marathon swims, I was very focused on swimming and stuff, but I very quickly realized that events don't happen, swims can't occur unless you have volunteers and people who are willing to help out and show up. And, it became clear to me very early on that unless I were willing to put in as much energy to give back to the sport in like a volunteer role or as like a race director or as a crew member, then, that's the only way to keep it sustainable. That's the only way it's the only way I could feel good about marathon swimming can be a really selfish endeavor. I mean, you're out there, you've got all these resources and people focused on you and your kind of arbitrary goal to go from point A to point B. I mean, let's be real, it's kind of silly. It's deeply meaningful for sure, but a lot of that meaning comes from, the team and who's helping you and how they're helping you. And so, I mean, it just became really clear to me very early on that unless I was willing to do that for other people, that there wasn't a path forward for me to continue swimming myself. So, done them both all along. I mean, I got involved with the Boston Light Swim, I guess 2008 or nine was the first year that Greg and I were managing it. But, at that point, it was mostly Greg, and I was kind of the sidekick. But over time, my involvement got a lot bigger. Um, and then from there, we founded Malza. I think the founding date was 2012. My memory is failing me right now, but again, that was to try and set up, a better process for helping other people access the water and do great things, and also to provide a pathway for people who want to volunteer. Not everybody wants to swim the Boston Light, but there are a lot of people who are really enthused about helping out, like the pilots that we get coming back every year. I think there's only one of them who's actually a swimmer. Um, but they live for that day in the summer, and it's nice to be able to offer, meaningful volunteer opportunities to people. Like that's a really important piece of it as well. So, yeah, that's a long rambling way to answer your question, I guess.
No, it's awesome. I mean, I think the Mausa has been I've done Boston Light Swim a couple times. Like Miles has always been part of my career, I guess my swim career since I
Yep.
started back in 2008, I think. I think my
Mhm.
first Boston Light Swim was around 2005, 2006. I was been doing it
Yeah.
for a while apparently.
Yeah.
And it's been really exciting to watch Mausa, I think, grow
Yeah.
and take on new pieces like the solo
Mhm.
swims, the egg rock scramble, like putting on
Mhm.
races and just allowing for people from like all over the world to come and see the cool, awesome opportunities like right in our backyard. So
Yeah.
it's been really fun to watch that. And I think with you and Mina and Alana and so many like pushing for those volunteers and making those opportunities happen, it's really exciting to see that growth at least in opportunities and I think that's a big reason for myself with Beyond the Breakers to have Miles as a partner is so meaningful
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
I think we're very aligned and just trying to make open water like a fun, community-driven, sport. One that can be selfish, but it takes a lot of those people to really make it happen for
Well,
those
that's just it.
selfish
Yeah.
swimmers.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just it. I'm not saying that swimmers are selfish. I'm just saying that the
I
endeavor
know.
itself can be very me centric, and having other ways to sort of project some of that same energy back outwards to the rest of the community, I think is super important to me. And it's definitely something that I've gotten from Beyond the Breakers is that it's very clear that you are trying your damnedest to build a community. And I feel really lucky that this is happening literally in my backyard because I live in Waltham. So for 3 years, the world has come to me to talk about swimming, and that's really cool. So yeah.
That's awesome. So, obviously you've been part of all these swims and recently you founded, was it last year or maybe the year before, Channel Support Services.
Mhm.
You've crewed over 30 successful marathon ice swims. So for you, what is it like being on the boat, on the other side of it, like really helping people push their limits? Like they're giving everything they have. How you
Mhm.
connect with them, what is it like for you to be part of that journey on that side of it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think first off, it's a privilege to be able to support somebody on something that is this important to them and meaningful. And a lot of the swims I've supported have had a charity component, which, not all of them do, and that's fine, but some of them have a much deeper, reason for existing. And there's a drive to do something that addresses some sort of social problem or a health issue or something. So I derive a lot of meaning from that. I also, it's just a lot of fun to spend a day on the water, and it's okay to just talk swimming all day. It's and I think also there's an interesting element too, like when I'm crewing, there's a real, like, you have to be thinking in real time and problem solving a lot of times. Like something goes sideways and you have to figure out, oh, well, the clip failed and we lost a water bottle. How are we gonna adapt? Or, the swimmer needs an Advil, but we don't have a proper pill delivery system. What am I gonna MacGyver from the things I have on board to get this to them? Or, there's hundreds of little things that come up. And I mean, for me personally, it's fun to be like, oh, I can fix this. I know how to do this, or I have just the right tool in my bag of kit, my giant bag that I take on all my swims with me. We've solved this problem before, probably. So, it's like that kind of thing. I find really engaging and a lot of fun. And also, it's just when I'm out either observing or crewing on a Mausa swim, I particularly if I'm on John Forgione's boat, he's one of our pilots. He's a lot of fun. Tim White is also a terrific pilot. Corey Briggs. We have an amazing local core group of pilots who are so excited to support the solo swimmers. And when I'm on their boats, we just yap away, and we're listening to music, and then the wind will pick up and we've got to be super focused, or there's a boat coming through and we got to watch out for danger and stuff. But it's just an enjoyable way to spend the day on the water. And I find it really meaningful to help people achieve their goals.
That's amazing. So, it's all fun and games, so it's not fun and games anymore.
Basically.
Weather changes, things happen. Like, has there been a tough call that you've had to make as part of a crew? And what did you learn from that?
Yeah, yeah. I think probably the first one that usually jumps to mind is when I was crewing Charlotte Bryn in the English Channel, and I think that was in 2022. It was her fifth attempt, I believe. And she had been doing really well, but then she got seasick and she was having some difficulty with some of the feeds. And yeah, it became clear about 11 hours into this thing. We were probably less than 2 miles off the coast of France. I mean, it was right freaking there, but it just became clear that, we were losing the tide and I was starting to worry that she was too cold. And she hadn't been keeping down enough nutrition and stuff. So, the pilot comes up and he's like, I don't like the looks of things. We're going to have to pull her. And so we talked about it, and having to deliver that news to her was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in a swimming context. Like, just watching her, comprehend, it took a second for it to sink in, and she handled it with such grace. And she was cheerful and she understood, and yet I could see that her heart was breaking in that minute. And it's so hard because we had all invested so much into getting her there, and she was close. And so like those experiences are tough, but the upside of it is that 2 years later, I went back with Charlotte in 2024. We had spent some time talking about nutrition and figuring out what feeds might work better for her. And she came back and she nailed it on the sixth attempt. She nailed it. She had a beautiful swim and she was absolutely over the moon at the finish. And like that's an experience I'll cherish forever because this is something that was really important to her. It was so important that she had tried 5 times and got back up to do it the sixth time and finally nailed it. And like that's what it's about, is the perseverance and, applying the lessons we learned on attempt 5 to make attempt 6 successful.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's not an easy call to have to make for people,
Mm-mm,
but obviously
mm-mm.
you're on their crew for a reason. They trust that you know what they're trying to do. You know this means the world to them, but you also know they need to live to swim another day. At the end of the
Exactly.
day, it's
Hmm.
just swimming and it's not worth dying over. So, and she
Exactly.
has that opportunity to come back and do it on the sixth
Yeah.
time. And she's a good swimmer. She's a gritty person.
Oh,
And to be
she's
able
a
to do that 6 times, like if I didn't make it on my first one, I don't know if I was going back.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
and that's
you
a
know?
really valid response. I mean, there's no wrong answer to that question of do I go back again? But, her perseverance, and her identifying that no, this was something that she really wanted to do and just sticking with it. Like, I'll forever be in awe of that. Like, she's just one of the most resilient, impressive people I know.
Yeah, she's another Beyond the Breaker speaker. She's coming
That's
back
right.
this year as well. And I mean,
Good.
I think, your motions behind it, I think it's the side people don't see as much. Like
Mhm.
when you're the crew or the coach, you might not be there or you're on the boat, but you're not in the water. And I don't think
Yep.
people realize like, you're on the journey with them and you
Yep.
want it just as bad as they do.
Yeah.
And you're seeing a different side of it all play out. And I think it's really powerful.
Yeah.
As a coach myself or, crewing myself, I've had calls where I've cried with my swimmers. I've had
Yeah.
like literally like bawling with them and then,
Mhm.
both happy and sad.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think people miss that. And I think that's part of what makes, you so crucial to this world and this community is people like you who do care about others and putting them first and making sure that they have the best chance at success on the day of their swim.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I just
speaking of
want
that,
everybody to have a good time and have a good
yeah.
swim?
Yeah, so we're transitioning from that to I guess we couldn't not talk about Sarah's four-way
Yeah.
English Channel crossing, and I know you've been part of so many historic crews. This
Hmm.
one obviously comes to mind. It's a huge feat for Sarah, and I think you were on the boat, one of the point people there, taking on so many roles. Can you briefly walk us through what that was like?
Oh, it was nuts. So, I mean, we had the roller coaster before the swim even started because, we had this meeting with Eddie and he's like, well, I think you're going to have to, can you extend your stay? Like, we'd already been there for about 2 weeks, and can you extend your stay? Because I'm just not seeing the weather. And then, 24 hours later, he calls back and says, never mind. I see a little window of about 48 hours of good weather. Let's give it a try. And so there was all that scrambling logistics with who was going to be on the boat because there was, Carl and Craig were meant to relieve each other, but then as it worked out, they both ended up being on the boat, which was clutch. We needed both of them for so many reasons. But so you had all of that, stuff happening beforehand, And I don't think that any of us had a real grasp on what kind of a response this swim was going to generate. Um, and so one of the observers we had on board, her name's Suzanne Martin. She lives in the UK. She's a lovely human, a good friend now, but I met her for the first time on Sarah's Swim, and she's a journalist. She works at the BBC and several of the other, major outlets in the UK. And we get on the boat and the swim is transpiring. We got to France the first time, started the return trip, and Suzanne says to me, did you guys put out a press release or anything about this? And I said, no. I mean, my experience with press releases is everybody just hits delete on them, like they don't go anywhere because marathon swimming, people don't understand that. And she was like, well, here in the UK with an English Channel hook, this might actually get some traction. Um, so in the midst of crewing the swim, and me and Carl and Craig were trading off, getting into support swim when the time would allow, because there's rules around when you can get in and for how long and stuff. So we were in a strict rotation, the three of us, for support swimming. So we're getting in and out of the water, and Suzanne and I sat down and we actually wrote this press release, and she put it out on the wire because she had access to that. It's something I don't have access to, but she was able to get it out on the wire. And within minutes, my phone started to ring. And I was about to head back in for another support swim. And it's like, 9 o'clock at night, and my phone is ringing on this boat. And we're somewhere most of the way back to England on the second leg, and I tell the reporter, I was like, I'd love to I think it was the guy from People. I was like, I'd love to talk to you, but I have to jump in and swim with Sarah. So give me a call back in about an hour and a half. I'll be out and dried off by then. And he did. He did. He called me back. But um, then things when so we made the turn into the third leg, and that was like the crucial point, because Sarah had been seasick for the first two legs off and on, but towards the end of the second leg she was in rough shape. She was not happy. She'd been swimming for 24 hours. She was a little disillusioned with this whole thing, and she was having thoughts of like, well, maybe a double is good enough, which, most of us would agree. That's more than enough, sweetheart. But Sarah being Sarah, she was really wrestling with this, but she just felt so awful. And, she still has the tissue expander in under her pectoral muscle from the recent cancer surgery. So she's literally chafing from the inside, and we're trying to figure out how to get her more lanolin, but it's like we can't get it where it needs to go because it's like it needs to physically go inside her body, and that's not going to happen. And so there's all this stuff. So we're trying to figure out the nausea, we're trying to figure out the chafing. And when she realized that she wasn't going to land on an actual beach, that was like the tipping point. So we're coming in, it's about midnight, coming into to near Spire Hoe, um, to make the turn into the third leg. And it was such a nice night. The conditions were good that the entire fleet had come out. So we're dodging, Eddie's carefully weaving through this fleet of boats that's moving very slowly. Like this armada is coming slowly off England, and we're trying to thread our way back through them without hitting boats. And it's dark. It's desperately dark out there. And so we ended up having to land at the seawall at Spire Hoe. So she didn't actually get to crawl out on the rocks. And that's all she had been envisioning, unbeknownst to me. She had been fantasizing about getting out of the water for a hot second, feeling gravity again, sitting down, stretching out, and then getting back in. And she was like, okay, if I can do that, I think I'll be all right. But then we threw this curveball. You're going to land at the seawall, just touch. And she was so confused at first. And I'm in the water with her because I was bringing her food and more lanolin and stuff for her to lube up at the turn. And she's like, what do you mean I'm not landing on the beach? And And she just sounded so heartbroken, like just anguish. I don't know that I've ever heard anguish quite like that before. She was just devastated. And she said that. She said, I'm devastated. And in her cute little West Texas accent. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah, no, this is terrible. This is really terrible, but this is how it's got to be because it's such a nice night. The conditions are so good. Everybody else is out here. This is the safest thing to do. And so watching her in real time sort of buck up and accept this information and she's like, I just don't know if I have it in me. And I said, you do. And I said, and it's middle of the night now. You're going to feel a lot better. You're going to feel a lot different in 6 hours when the sun comes up. So, don't make decisions in the dark. You've got to stay in for 6 hours until sunrise. Then we can talk about if you want to get out. But you're making the turn into the third leg and you're just going to suck it up because that's what we're here to do. And she's like, she gets off the wall and starts swimming, and she's still puking and stuff. Finally, we get her some Zofran. She settles down. Once the nausea settled, she was a little bit more okay with things. And then indeed, the sun did come up, and she did feel a lot better. That second wind you get, even after you've been up for 25, 30 hours, whatever it had been at that point, you do feel a little better. Your circadian rhythm just kind of resets a little bit. So with the nausea behind her and the sun up, the third leg settled in nicely. Conditions were still really good. Um, and so, when I hopped in for the turn into the fourth leg, she says to me, oh God, now I got to swim all the way back. She was like, whose idea was this? So yours, darling. Here you go. Here's your lanolin. And, so we start back. And prior to the swim, Eddie had told her that if you can give me consistent 12-hour legs on that fourth leg, I can float you back to England like a log, because that's just the way the tides work and stuff. Except for that, the tides didn't work right that day. There was something, the tides don't always do what they're forecast to do. And so, it had started to get a little breezy as time went on. So again, we're in the middle of the dark and suddenly like, we're off course. We're not where we should be at this point. And so that fourth leg dragged on for about 17 hours. And then there was a lot of drama towards the finish about where is she actually going to land? Because initially it looked like she was coming into Shaky Beach. And then it looked like we were going up to St. Margaret's Bay. And so there's people on land driving back and forth trying to meet us. And meanwhile, I'm still answering press phone calls and doing interviews and like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't talk. I got to get in the water, click, this kind of thing. Um, Phones blowing up, social media is blowing up. Then she ended up on track to land in the ferry terminal, which is not a good thing. So Eddie had to make a decision to do a hard turn into the current along the seawall at Shakespeare Beach, just outside of, just beyond where Swimmers Beach is. And that was really hard because then Sarah had to sprint basically for that last hour, just because the way that the tide had turned and the currents and stuff. But she's just so gritty, so tough that she made it look easy. Carl and I got in with her at the finish, and I had to really kick to keep up at that point. And she's been swimming for 56 hours, and I'm like, just trying to keep up. But yeah, and then we landed, and then like the real hoopla began in terms of like the press coverage and stuff, and everybody wants an interview with her. And at this point, Sarah needed more than anything, she needed a bath and a nap. And it's true what they say about the British press. They're very persistent, and they're not taking no for an answer, and they don't like, well, we can do it, but we need a few hours. They didn't like that response either. So thankfully, Suzanne came with me back to the house and she helped field some of this onslaught of press requests and stuff. And she knew who some of these people were and she knew the good outlets. And she was like, all right, so here's how we're going to triage this. I mean, she was an absolute lifesaver because I was pretty tapped out at this point. I mean, I've also been awake for like 65 hours and trying to function in a PR role, which isn't really my natural habitat. It was intense. The whole experience was really intense, but um I think it was just such a joyful fist in the face of reality. Like, yeah, cancer, you didn't get this one. You tried and you didn't. And oh, by the way, she's still the best in the world.
Pretty incredible story. I think it, transitions nicely as well. Like we're heading into Beyond the Breakers, and this year you're part of two. One we'll get into, but this transitions nicely. I think the big one, you and Sarah are
Mhm.
going to be doing more of a fireside chat to close out the
Yeah.
day. I think we're
Yeah.
workshopping a title still, but the theme is
Work.
being the first, what it's like to be the
Yeah.
first, what goes into being the first. So, you've obviously, I think you've had a few firsts of your own swims and then also crewing. So, what are some of the experiences you're planning to draw from to bring forth in this session to help people understand what goes into it and how they can do this on their own.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, uh, there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot that I think it's easy to overlook. So, like subtle local variations in currents and tides and stuff. Like this is something, for example, a couple weeks ago we had Abigail Fairman and Sarah Roberts came out and they were attempting to swim from Devereaux Beach in Marblehead down to Minot Beach in Situate. And on paper, it looks like a straight shot, should be no problem. Theoretically, there's this north to south current that runs down the coastline, but we were probably going to be far enough out that that probably wouldn't be a major factor. And also the tides not shouldn't be a major factor because again, you're far enough offshore that it should just be like crossing water. And then so that's what it looks like on paper, but then in practicality, you get out there and we get down near Nantasket Roads just as the wind kicks up and we got pushed way into shore and suddenly the landing is no longer possible at all. And it's that this is like a quintessential first. Like we just don't know enough about how those currents wrap around Nantasket, the tip of Hull there. There's some real squirrely currents that go completely counter to what looks like on paper and in forecasts like they should be doing. Um, and so we need to do a little more research. So they're going to have to come back. We may try going the other direction. They'll get it. I mean, if anybody can pull this swim off, it's these two. But this is one of the things that's so challenging about first and why first are celebrated is because you don't have that wealth of information that, you know, 85 people have done the swim before you, and have all that data to draw on. We just don't, we're not there yet. So that's one of the things I think makes first really interesting. But also there's an element of open water swimming, I think, which that appeals to me, which is like that pioneering spirit and like that that adventure, that the old time explorer going off in search of new lands and stuff. And there's like an element of that I think is really appealing, that yeah, you're risking spectacular failure. You're risking just not getting there. But then that's kind of the whole point of what we're doing anyway. Because if you're guaranteed to get there, what would be the point in starting? So push the boundaries, push the limits, see how it goes. And if it doesn't work the first time, that's okay. What did you learn that you can apply to the second attempt to make it better?
Amazing. I think it's gonna be really a great way to close out the day. I'm really, really excited for it.
Yeah.
And then I know the other conversation you're gonna be part of, which I think is an important one. We've obviously partnered with Mausa, been a great supporter of ours since our inception 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So this year you're gonna be part of the Mausa safety panel. So more of a
Yep.
panel discussion around open water safety. So,
Hmm.
briefly, why do you, Mausa, why is open water safety, deserving of a dedicated panel conversation, and what do you think this looks like, or how do you think this comes together the day of the event?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's critical because I mean, the best way to kill a swim is to kill a swimmer during the swim. So, swimmers in has to equal swimmers out. Otherwise, it's game over. So, if
Mm,
again, if trying to keep the sport sustainable, accessible, you have to keep it safe. You have to, provide the right infrastructure to ensure people that, yes, there is innate risk in anything involving open water. Like this is not a risk-free endeavor, but there are ways to make it a little bit safer. There are some common sense things that you can do that will protect people. So let's be methodical about applying them. And this is something that I think everybody should be aware of because, you should never swim alone. You should always have an exit plan from any swim, even if it's just a training swim at some place you've been a million times before. What happens if you start having chest pains or something? Or, there's a lightning storm and you're 2 miles offshore. Like, what do you do? What's your plan? And having contingencies in place as much as you can ahead of time is really important. And I think it's critical for events. Like if anybody who is putting on an event has to make safety their priority. I mean, otherwise it's just an irresponsible race director. So that's my 2 cents.
Amazing. Well, I think it's going to be really helpful, informative, maybe even set some of the guidelines around safety at events. So really excited for it. So last
Oh, great.
question,
Mhm.
really briefly. You've been Beyond the Breakers the past 2 years. You're coming again this year. What was your experience like the past 2 years? What did you think? What was most exciting to you? And then who or what are you most excited about this year?
Yeah, so it's just been so fun to have so many swimmers all in one place like that. And in like this context of like an educational setting, that's also fun and social and all of that. So like the networking piece of it, the getting to meet people. I mean, like last year I was giving my talk and at the end, Pat Gallant-Charette came up and said, "Can you sign this book?" She collects signatures from famous open water swimmers, and I was so flattered. I was like, "What? Sure, of course I'll sign your book." Like those kinds of things are really fun. And it's that sometimes it's those little like unexpected little interactions that you have with people that you've admired from afar for so long. I think that's where a lot of the value in something like this comes from. I mean, the sessions have all been excellent. I don't think I've sat through a single one that I thought was poor. And they all I love that everybody is sort of bringing themselves to the sport and to the community in a way that we don't get to do in like an event-based situation.
Mhm.
Um, like this is a little bit more cerebral, a little bit thoughtful, a little, contemplative and stuff, but it's also there's a lot of really actionable, useful information being shared and built on and stuff. And so I think you've done a fabulous job creating this body of knowledge really that hopefully is going to just continue for a long time.
Amazing. Well, that's Elaine Howley, marathon swimmer, support crew, observer, race director, PR person, Miles vice president. So yeah, I mean, thank you so much for the time today, Elaine. I really
You're very
appreciate it. We're
welcome.
really excited for your sessions in
Yeah,
November, and we're
great.
really, grateful for Miles's support. So if obviously you have your tickets because you're speaking, but if you don't have your tickets, you're listening, swimbeyondthebreakers.com. We'll see you on November 14th.